Daniel chapter 2. The Terror of Dreams. While there are no unconscious activities and hidden potentialities in God, man is largely governed by them, and dreams are a persistent reminder of that fact. Dreams are a constant resuscitation of a dead and impotent past. Sleep, kinsman, thou to death and trance, and madness thou hast forged at last, a night-long present of the past. By this reminder of man's frailty and lack of absolute freedom and determination, dreams thus speak also of death, trance and madness to proud man. Even the joy a man experiences in dreams is illusory, as one of John Ray's proverbs asserted. After a dream of a wedding comes a corpse. The unreality of man's power, as revealed in dreams, casts shadows on the reality of his waking self-government, so that, from the ancient Chinese to Bret Harte, the question concerning waking also arises. Do I sleep? Do I dream? Are things what they seem? Prospero in Shakespeare's The Tempest expressed a cynicism concerning life by reference to its similarity to dreams because of its insubstantiality. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. Indeed, wherever man aspires to be as God and to assert an absolute freedom, dreams are a terror in that they are a reminder of creaturehood, culpability, and condemnation. The terror of dreams, therefore, is the terror of mortality and guilt, and the desperation of mutability. Nebuchadnezzar, both consciously and unconsciously, had come face to face with this terror. Prior to sleeping, he had been deeply concerned about the future. Chapter 2, verse 29. His great empire, built on the principle of continuity and the dream of one world, might someday meet that radical discontinuity of death and destruction which had overwhelmed previous Towers of Babel. Such grievous facts have often led men, from the ancients to Nietzsche, and the present, to a cyclical view of history, to the meaningless horror of eternal recurrence. Sleeping after such unhappy meditations, Nebuchadnezzar had been subjected to a dream from God in answer to his urgent concern about what should come to pass hereafter. Chapter 2, verse 29, but his response had been terror. Chapter 2, verse 1. His waking response had been a hatred of the impotence of the religious and scientific practitioners of his day and a desire to expose their futility. Having known the terrors of the unseen, and knowing vividly how man in his proudest knowledge only skated on the thin ice of the seen, his urge was to mass destruction. It was comparable to the resentment of the sick for the healthy, of the dying for the living. Having seen the reduction of all his life's work to nothing in essence, he savagely sought the reduction of all man's wisdom to the same death and chaos. His demand that his wise men interpret the dream without knowledge of it was not based on forgetfulness of the dream, but a deliberate concealment of it. The older English wording, "the thing is gone from me," chapter 2, verse 5, Authorized Version, has been rendered by Leopold as, "the matter has been fully determined by me." The deliberate concealment is restated. They answered a second time and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we shall make known the interpretation." The king answered and said, "Now I know with absolute certainty that ye would gain time. Just because ye see that the matter is fully determined by me, that, if ye do not make the dream known, one law applies to you, and ye have been agreed among yourselves upon lying and corrupt words, to speak them in my presence, until things change. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall perceive that ye can show the interpretation." These learned men, faced with a degree of death, were both consciously and unconsciously evasive. Their conscious evasion was an attempt to stall for time until the king's mood changed, and thereby save their lives. Their unconscious evasion was an unwillingness to face the implication of the terror of dreams. The dream could be retold without any knowledge of details. All man's hopes for autonomy, his rejection of God's eternal decree, his insistence on the hiddenness of God, and the knowability of man, were reduced to nothingness and terror by any dream. Man's unconscious witnesses in dreams to his burden of guilt concerning the past, his impotence in the present, and his ignorance and dread of the future. When latter-day wise men, starting with Freud, began, however mistakenly, to turn to dreams and the unconscious with a more systematic searching, it was the beginning of man's epistemological self-consciousness, and Freudianism has been as often rejected for this reason as for its errors. Man forgets his dreams and forgets the significance of dreams in order to escape epistemological self-consciousness. His attempt to reckon with the fact of his unconscious being has been oblique. Dreams and the ostensible government by stars and planets, that is, astrology, man's recognition of outside control, are parts of a continuum, so that man's unconsciousness is shared with a cosmos, whose determinism is also shared by man, so that a common divinity in essence and a common struggle characterize the whole of being. The fact of creaturehood is thus obviated and avoided. Dreams and stars are also used to evade responsibility, so that man, in his ambivalence, asserts, on the one hand, total autonomy and responsibility as a god, and, on the other, denies his manhood and all responsibility in the name of total conditioning and chance. Nebuchadnezzar, impelled by a desire to expose the pretentiousness of man's autonomous knowledge, forced the issue on terms requiring a surrender by man, or an acknowledgement of the omnipotence of terror and death. Having known futility, he would tolerate no hope and no knowledge. Having smelled death, he hated life. The decree of execution was passed and left to Arioch to carry out. The decree included all members of the Royal College, including those not immediately consulted, such as Daniel and his friends, who were ignorant of its cause. Chapter 2, verses 13 following. It was, in essence, a decree against knowledge, and an assault on all learning as futility. If Nebuchadnezzar was doomed to mutability and meaninglessness, and Babylon also, then, least of all, must its philosophers and wise men be permitted the luxury of self-deception. It is important to understand this mood, because it is increasingly the temper of modern man. Warner, in The Urge to Mass Destruction, has described this sense of impotence and defeat, and its lust to destroy, as an impulse to organize the mass self-destruction, to seek a mass grave for all, and to find victory through defeat and total destruction. Nihilism and the bloodbath are the defeated man's revenge on life and his means of triumph, and this, in a measure, Nebuchadnezzar felt, as do all ungodly men, potentially or actually, in varying degrees. A man who has no reason for living has a reason for hating life, and a man without hope resents all hope as an ugly disease. It will not do merely to condemn this cynicism, it must be answered. Daniel and his friends, sentenced to death without any offence, immediately besought God in prayer, and Daniel received his answer in a night vision. The significance was immediately grasped by Daniel. Blessed be the name of God for ever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom to the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. Chapter 2, verses 20 to 22. Young's comment here is especially to the point. The course of history lies in the hands of God. These critical periods which occur in the realm of time as such are determined by God. It is not in heaven alone that we are to seek for evidences of God's power, but also on earth, where this power is daily manifested in God's control over all things. God has sovereign determination of all political changes. In this expression, says Montgomery, lies a challenge to the fatalism of the Babylonian astral religion, a feature which, in its influence, long survived in the Greco-Roman world. Here is a clear-cut assertion of the eternal decree. Darkness does exist, and the realm of creation is heavy with the weight of potentiality and the unconscious, but wisdom and light dwell with God, who is in totality entirely omniscient and self-conscious, and hence inevitably acting purposefully and in terms of an eternal decree. All mutability is in terms of this goal, and the changes in seasons of time are accordingly never futile but purposive. Moreover, present time is not merely manure for future time, but is in itself revelatory of God and His eternal decree, which is always made manifest to the wise and understanding, those who are the Lord's, and whose lives are governed by His word. The cynicism of Nebuchadnezzar is thus without excuse as an end in itself, although a necessary step in his disillusionment with the constructs of autonomous man's philosophy. Daniel's prayer of thanksgiving, chapter 2, verse 23, is his rejoicing in God's sovereign grace. No merit on Daniel's part is the ground of this revelation, but rather the free and predestinating grace of God. Daniel, brought before Nebuchadnezzar, emphasized the impotence of man as against the eternal decree. Chapter 2, verse 27, placing all the power and glory with God, who alone is the source of all determination, interpretation, and power. Daniel denied any merit in himself. God used him as an instrument to bring epistemological self-consciousness to Nebuchadnezzar, chapter 2, verse 28 following, so that he might see and know himself in relationship to God. Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Daniel stated, was of a great and awe-inspiring image whose 1. Head was of fine gold, 2. His breast and his arms of silver, 3. His belly and his sides of brass, and 4. His legs of iron, his feet part iron and part clay, clearly a picture of deterioration. A stone cut out without hands and in no man's hand smote the image upon his feet, destroying it so radically that its fragments were like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. Chapter 2, verses 31 to 35. Daniel then gave the interpretation thereof. 1. There is a sovereign decree, emanating from a sovereign God, by whose ordination alone Nebuchadnezzar reigns. Nothing can be understood apart from this presupposition. 2. The head of gold is Nebuchadnezzar and his empire, representing in especially powerful form the dream of empire and cosmos by autonomous man. 3. A second empire shall follow, embodying the same dream, but of lesser capacity. Subsequently, this power is seen by Daniel as the Medo-Persian Empire. 4. The third, of brass, then follows, later revealed to be the Macedonian Empire of Alexander the Great and the state established by his successors. The fourth power then takes over, identified later as Rome, and represents the culmination of antiquity's dream of empire as the reconstitution of man's dream of paradise apart from God. Its parts, however, have no cohesiveness, and, like iron and clay, will not mix. 6. In the days of this fourth empire, a fifth monarchy, supernatural in origin, shall destroy the ancient dream and replace it with a true empire which shall conquer the earth and shall stand forever. Chapter 2, verses 36 to 45. Nebuchadnezzar, faced with the terror of dreams of government and conquest by the cosmic unconscious, the revolt and overlordship of the universal hiddenness and sleep as it overwhelms man's brief awakening, was now given an answer other than chance or fatalism as the key to history. The issue, ultimately, is between chance and the eternal decree, but men have seen it as also involving another and illogical alternative. The alternatives thus become: 1. The reign and ultimacy of chance. Predication and meaning become impossible, as do law, knowledge, science, and life itself. No culture has ever faced the implications of the ultimacy of chance without collapse. 2. Blind and materialistic determinism or fatalism. The fortuitous concourse of atoms has somehow, and illogically, led to a blind and insentient law which is irrelevant to consciousness, lacking in all meaning, and leading only to the misery of eternal recurrence. Oriental philosophies and Nietzsche have alike found this the ground of despair and of world and life negation. However, they may have, as in Nietzsche's case, struggled against it. The Babylonian astral religion held to a form of fatalism, and Nebuchadnezzar was under its malign influence. 3. The eternal decree, or total predestination, the contingency of second causes, is established, and responsibility, meaning, and direction given to history and to man's life under God. Apart from the eternal decree, no meaning is possible, and only brute factuality, beyond interpretation, reigns. This rescue of history brought joy to Nebuchadnezzar and promotion to Daniel and his 3 friends. Chapter 2, verses 46 to 49. More than that, it led to Nebuchadnezzar's worship of Daniel as a representative of the God of gods and Lord of kings, the God whose eternal decree undergirds all creation. Chapter 2, verse 47. Nebuchadnezzar, however, had failed to understand the full import of the vision. It was a rescue of history, but in terms of what, and to what end? Common to the imperial goals of antiquity is the pursuit of the world's saviour and the return to paradise. The secularization of historical studies has led to the castration of history and the excision of all religious goals in favour of a projection of purely politico-economic or other modern objectives on the empires of antiquity. Ethelbert Stauffer's Christ and the Caesars is an important statement to the contrary of the Roman messianic dream. The goal was a magnificent one, sought with power, passion, and intensity. Paradise regained. From Achaean city Enoch to the Tower of Babel, and on through imperial Rome in the present, man has sought to efface the burden of human guilt and misery, unite mankind into one world, and restore paradise to man. The depreciation of the past as primitive has led to the obscuring of the amazing approximations of order, unlimited wealth, peace, and prosperity in some ancient empires, all envisioned conditions of paradise. But these and more were approximations only, never the reality. The fifth monarchy succeeds where all its false messianic predecessors failed, so that any Christian concept of history which is defeatist or otherworldly stands under the condemnation of Daniel. The world is not merely a vale of soul-making, nor does it culminate in the sorry historical triumph of Antichrist, as amillennial and premillennial interpretations would have it. The fifth monarchy succeeds not only in destroying its rivals, but also in accomplishing what they, on false premises, sought to do. The empires, then, the modernists today, and the states of the sage are all, in this one respect, wiser than the Church, in that they do not deny meaning or triumph to history, but seek it earnestly, if on false premises, and in terms of autonomous man. There is, however, a difference between the goal of these 4 empires and the biblical purpose. It is not an earthly paradise in itself which is the goal of history, as Scripture depicts it, but rather the restoration of communion with God, of which an earthly paradise, as depicted by Isaiah and Revelation, is a byproduct. Man is keenly aware of the loss of paradise, but not conscious of the broken communion with God. This communion and its new world order Isaiah depicted as a consequence of the atonement. Moreover, it is not a return to Eden, not the recreation of the garden, but paradise in terms of community with God and man in the New Jerusalem. The romanticism of isolation and self-exaltation is replaced with communion in community. This requires a long process of historical maturation, beginning with the call of Abraham, who, in vision, saw that city and rejoiced. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 to 16, John chapter 8, verse 56. And culminating with Christ's coming again, the eschatological end of history, when the process is completed. Then the tares will be fully tares, and the wheat fully wheat. Epistemological self-consciousness, man's knowledge of himself as a creature, and his analogical knowledge of God, will affect the full restoration of godly man, even as the full implications of the fall overwhelm the covenant breaker or the reprobate. The implications of history having been developed, time shall be no more. The four empires are depicted as one man, fallen and pseudo-messianic man. This image is met wherever man and the state assume the messianic control of history, wherever Hamlet's cry is echoed. Time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. Noble sounding though this cry may be, it is the essence of pride and madness. None of us is called to set the world or our time aright, but rather to meet our responsibilities under God. The responsibility and work at hand is ours. The issue is in the hands of God. History gives us the perpetual crisis and defeat of that presumption, from Babel to the US .4 program and beyond. No man or state can play Atlas without incurring judgment, for we are called to be men, not God, and to attempt more is not nobility, but insane presumption. Given Hamlet's delusion that he was the god of judgment and restoration, his tragedy was inevitable, and his life a blasting of good and evil alike in terms of a more radical evil than the murder he condemned. Nebuchadnezzar's image is fallen man in all his pride, attempting to issue his own eternal decree and seize the reins of history for himself. This dream is thus a condemnation of men and states as wedded to this hope. It is also an offence to the Jews, and gives an important clue to the neglect of Daniel in antiquity and subsequently. Daniel makes clear that God bypassed his chosen people in favour of 4 great monarchies, which were to work out the implications of ancient history, and then called forth a 5th monarchy, which is by no means identified with Israel. The God who raised Assyria, the rod of mine anger, and Nebuchadnezzar, into whose hands the whole earth was given, and to whom God spoke as he once spoke to the kings of Israel and Judah, and the God who called Cyrus his anointed, was clearly not the exclusive God of Israel, nor one who limited his eternal purposes to his chosen people. The priority of the eternal decree over the historical call of Israel is too manifest, too openly present, and presumed beyond the necessity of statement. This priority of the eternal decree over history and its status as the ground of all history, that is, Israel and the Church, was an offence to Israel, as it is today an offence to the Church. But the priority of the eternal decree is over all time, over Israel and Babylon alike, and the presumption of the outward Israel in the Church is no less an offence than the pride of Babel and of Rome. Autonomous man has always feet of clay. Thus, God the Omnipotent reigns, not a God on the sidelines who merely awards prizes to the determiners of history, but God the Lord, who ordains all things, and by whose will alone kings reign, empires fall, and in terms of whose will alone history has purpose, meaning and direction. And history is God's process whereby the unconscious in creation is brought to consciousness, the implicit made explicit, and the maturation of tares and wheat effected, until the vision of Joel be fulfilled. In with the sickle, the harvest is ripe. Come, tread the winepress, tread it, it is full. The troughs are overflowing with their wickedness. Joel chapter 3 verse 13, Moffat's translation. And it shall come to pass in that day, that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come forth of the house of the Lord, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Joel chapter 3 verse 18.